The early evening light cast a warm glow across the front porch of the colonial house as 31-year-old Sarah Mitchell applied one final touch of lipstick and checked her reflection in the hallway mirror. She wore an elegant, champagne-colored dress that made her feel confident and attractive, something she had not experienced in quite some time. Her long blonde hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and for the first time in months, she felt like herself again rather than just a tired single mother going through the motions of daily life. Tonight marked Sarah's first attempt at dating since her divorce was finalized 8 months earlier. Her best friend Emma had set her up with someone she described as perfect for you, a successful businessman named Michael who was supposedly charming, intelligent, and ready for a serious relationship. Sarah had been hesitant about jumping back into the dating world, but Emma had been insistent that it was time to start thinking about her own happiness again. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock, and Sarah felt her stomach flutter with nervous anticipation. She had been looking forward to an adult evening out, complete with dinner at an upscale restaurant and perhaps a movie or drinks afterward. Her 8-year-old daughter Lily was staying overnight with her grandmother, giving Sarah the rare luxury of an entire evening to herself. Sarah opened the door to find a strikingly handsome man in his mid-30s standing on her porch. Michael wore an impeccably tailored navy suit with a crisp white shirt, and his dark hair was styled perfectly. He had the kind of confident bearing that suggested success and sophistication, exactly what Emma had promised. But something in his expression seemed tense, almost nervous, which Sarah found oddly endearing given his polished appearance. "Sarah?" Michael asked, his voice carrying a slight uncertainty despite his confident appearance. "Yes, that's me. You must be Michael. It's nice to finally meet you." Sarah smiled, stepping forward to greet him properly. Michael returned her smile, but Sarah noticed that he seemed to be struggling with something. He glanced briefly toward the street, then back at her, his expression becoming more serious. "Sarah, you look absolutely beautiful," Michael said, his voice sincere despite the obvious tension he was carrying. "But I need to tell you something before we go anywhere, and I hope you won't be too upset with me." Sarah felt her stomach tighten with apprehension. In her limited experience with dating after divorce, conversations that started with, "I need to tell you something," rarely led anywhere good. "What is it?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Michael took a deep breath and looked directly into her eyes. "My kids are in the car," he said quietly, the words carrying a weight that suggested this revelation was as difficult for him to share as it was unexpected for her to hear. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face as the implications of his words sank in. "Your kids? I'm sorry, I don't understand. Emma didn't mention that you had children." "That's because I asked her not to," Michael admitted, running his hand through his hair in a gesture that betrayed his nervousness. "I know how that sounds, and I know it was wrong of me to keep this from you. But I've had experiences where women lost interest the moment they learned I was a single father." Sarah stared at him, trying to process this unexpected turn of events. She had been prepared for a romantic evening alone with an attractive man, not a family outing with someone's children. "How many children?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "2," Michael replied. "Emma is 6, and James is 4. Their mother passed away 2 years ago, and it's just been the 3 of us ever since." Sarah felt her heart clench at the mention of his wife's death. Whatever anger she might have felt about the deception was immediately tempered by understanding of the profound loss this family had experienced. "I'm so sorry for your loss," Sarah said automatically, her natural compassion overriding her confusion about the situation. "Thank you," Michael said, his expression softening slightly. "Sarah, I know this is not what you expected, and I completely understand if you want to cancel tonight. I can take the kids home and we can pretend this never happened. But I was hoping maybe that you might be willing to meet them," We could do something family-friendly instead of the restaurant reservation I made. Sarah looked past Michael toward the street, where she could see a luxury sedan with two small figures visible in the back seat. The children appeared to be sitting quietly, probably wondering why their father was having such a serious conversation with the strange woman at the door. "Michael, I need to understand something," Sarah said, trying to organize her thoughts. "Did you plan this from the beginning? Were you always intending to bring your children on our first date?" Michael's face reddened slightly, and Sarah could see that her question had hit on something he was particularly ashamed of. "No, that wasn't the original plan. I had arranged for a babysitter tonight, but she called this afternoon with a family emergency. I tried to find someone else, but on such short notice." He trailed off, then looked at her with complete honesty. "The truth is, I could have canceled our date, but I've been looking forward to meeting you for weeks, and I was afraid that, if I canceled tonight, you might not give me another chance." Sarah felt a mixture of emotions washing over her. Part of her was annoyed by the deception and the assumption that she would be okay with such a dramatic change of plans. But another, part of her was touched by his obvious desperation to meet her and his vulnerability in admitting his fears about rejection. "So what exactly are you proposing we do tonight?" Sarah asked, gesturing toward her elegant dress. "I'm not exactly dressed for a playground or Chuck E. Cheese." Michael's face lit up with hope at her question, interpreting it correctly as a sign that she was at least considering his proposal rather than slamming the door in his face. "I know a place," Michael said eagerly. "There's a family restaurant called the Garden Room that has excellent food for adults, but also activities for children. It's upscale enough that you wouldn't feel out of place in that beautiful dress, but relaxed enough that the kids would be comfortable. And if things go well, maybe we could take a walk through the park afterward. The kids love the fountain there." Sarah looked at Michael's hopeful expression and found herself wavering. She thought about her own daughter, Lily, and how difficult it would be to balance dating with single parenthood. She also thought about how few men would be willing to date a woman with a child, and how that same challenge must be even more difficult for a single father with two young children. "Michael, can I ask you something honestly?" "Of course. How often do you do this? Bring your children on dates, I mean." Michael looked embarrassed by the question. "Never," he admitted. "I've been on exactly 3 dates since my wife died, and none of them led to second dates once the women learned about Emma and James. Tonight was supposed to be different. I was going to tell you about them over dinner after you had gotten to know me a little better." Sarah studied his face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation, but all she could see was genuine nervousness and hope. This was clearly a man who was trying to navigate an impossible situation, balancing his desire for adult companionship with his responsibilities as a single parent. "Give me just a minute," Sarah said, stepping back into her house. Sarah stood in her hallway for a moment, weighing her options. She could send Michael away and spend the evening alone, feeling sorry for herself and wondering what might have been. Or she could take a chance on something completely unexpected and see where it led. When Sarah returned to the porch, she was carrying a light cardigan and her purse. "Okay, Michael, let's go meet your children." The relief on Michael's face was so profound that Sarah almost laughed. "Really? You're sure?" "I'm sure," Sarah said, surprising herself with how certain she sounded. "But I want you to know that I have a daughter too. She's 8, and she's spending tonight with her grandmother. If we're going to do this, if we're going to see where this goes, then we both need to be completely honest about our situations." Michael's expression shifted to one of genuine surprise and delight. "You have a daughter? Emma didn't mention that either. Probably because I asked her not to," Sarah admitted with a wry smile. "I guess we both had the same fears about how parenthood might affect our dating prospects." As they walked toward Michael's car, Sarah felt her nervousness shifting into anticipation. This was definitely not the evening she had planned, but maybe that was exactly what she needed. The two children in the back seat looked up with curious eyes as Sarah approached the car. Emma, the 6-year-old, had long dark hair and pigtails and was clutching a stuffed unicorn. James, the 4-year-old, was building something with small blocks and looked up with the serious expression that some young children have when they are concentrating. "Emma, James, I'd like you to meet Sarah," Michael said as he opened the car door for her. "Sarah is going to have dinner with us tonight." "Hi, Sarah," Emma said with the straightforward friendliness of childhood. "I like your dress. It's very sparkly." "Thank you, Emma. I like your unicorn. What's his name?" "Her name is Rainbow, and she can fly," Emma replied matter-of-factually. James looked up from his blocks and studied Sarah with the intense gaze that some children use when they are trying to figure out if a new adult can be trusted. "Are you Daddy's new friend?" Sarah glanced at Michael, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the car seat, then back at James. "I'm your daddy's new friend, yes, and I hope I can be your friend too." James considered this seriously, then nodded. "Okay, but I get to sit by the window." "That seems fair," Sarah agreed, settling into the seat beside him. As they drove to the restaurant, Sarah found herself genuinely enjoying the children's chatter. Emma told her about her kindergarten class and her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, while James explained the complex rules of the block game he had been playing. Michael glanced at her frequently in their view mirror, his expression a mixture of gratitude and amazement. The evening that followed was unlike any first date Sarah had ever experienced. Instead of awkward getting-to-know-you conversation, over candlelit dinner, she found herself helping James cut his chicken while discussing Emma's upcoming school play with Michael. The children were well-behaved and charming, clearly accustomed to eating in restaurants and interacting with adults. What surprised Sarah most was how natural it felt. She had expected to feel awkward or resentful about the unexpected change of plans, but instead she found herself relaxing in a way she had not anticipated. There was something refreshing about the honesty of the situation, the way the children's presence made any pretense or game-playing impossible. "Sarah," Emma said as they shared dessert, "do you have any kids?" "I do," Sarah replied. "I have a daughter named Lily who is 8 years old. She's staying with her grandmother tonight." "That's almost the same age as me," Emma said excitedly. "Does she like to color? I love to color." "She loves to color," Sarah confirmed. "Maybe sometime you two could meet and color together." Sarah glanced at Michael as she made the suggestion and saw that he was looking at her with an expression that was equal parts hope and disbelief. Clearly, he had not expected the evening to go this well. Later, as they walked through the park and watched the children play by the fountain, Michael and Sarah finally had a chance to talk alone. "Sarah, I can't thank you enough for tonight," Michael said. "I know this wasn't what you signed up for, and you've been incredibly gracious about the whole situation." "Michael, can I tell you something? This has been one of the best first dates I've ever had." Michael looked at her in surprise. "Really?" "Really. I've been on dates where men spent the entire evening talking about themselves, or where I felt like I was auditioning for a role I didn't want. Tonight, I got to see who you really are. I got to see how you interact with your children, how much you love them, and how they feel safe and happy with you. Those are the most important things I could learn about someone I might want to build a relationship with." 6 months later, Sarah and Michael were planning a weekend camping trip that would include Lily, Emma, and James. The children had become fast friends, and Sarah and Michael had discovered that their shared experience of single parenthood had given them a foundation of understanding and empathy that made their relationship stronger than either had expected. Emma still asked when they were getting married, and James had started referring to Sarah as Daddy's Sarah, in a way that suggested he considered her a permanent part of their family. Lily adored Michael and had started asking if she could call him Papa Mike, like Emma and James did. Sometimes the most important relationships in our lives begin with moments of complete honesty about who we really are and what we really need. Michael's whispered confession that his kids were in the car had been the beginning of something beautiful, not because it was what either of them had planned, but because it was real, honest, and built on the understanding that love means accepting and embracing all the complications that make someone's life complete.